In Lab 8, we'll be using the chi-square distributions, and in particular in StatCrunch, we'll be using the variance stats settings. So we'll start with 9.3, number 15, and we'll be using a QQ plot and the variance stats setting to create a confidence interval. So let's click the StatCrunch link, open up the data, and the first thing we need to do is create a QQ plot. Selecting a sample and correlation statistic, we compute and we find the QQ plot as well as the correlation statistic. I'll leave it to you to interpret those accordingly as part of your lab. The next thing we need to do is go to Stat, Variance Stats, One Sample, and this time we have Data. And we will select the sample, and we'll need to create a confidence interval with a 90% level of confidence, so type in 0.9 and compute it. The results here relate to variance. In order to adjust these for standard deviation, we'll take the square root. So the sample variance is given here. The square root gives you the sample standard deviation. Likewise, the square root of the lower limit and the square root of the upper limit will give you the appropriate standard deviation confidence interval. Don't forget to save your results, include those in your lab report, as well as a complete answer to the questions in the textbook. I need a full interpretation, not just these results. The next portion of the lab, we'll be working with number 10 in section 10.4. In this case, we'll be running a hypothesis test, again for standard deviation. There is no data, we'll be using summary data here. So I'm going to go back to my window, and we'll need to go to Stat, Variance Stats, One Sample with Summary. Now we'll need the sample variance and sample size. Notice the sample standard deviation is given here. We need the sample variance, and so we need to square this result. The sample was 19 bottles with a sample standard deviation of 0.38. So we'll need to go back to our window. 0.38 is our sample standard deviation. Squaring it will give the variance. Sample size 19. When I run my hypothesis, I'm comparing against the original value of 0.42. So I need to put 0.42 here, and don't forget to square it because these are variance values required in this test. The given value is standard deviation and thus must be squared in order to run the test. What I'm testing for is whether there was any reduction. This is a left tail test, and I'm going to compute. Now don't forget to interpret these results completely. The hypothesis test is more than just the values. You need to come up with your answer to the question in the textbook and include that, please, along with your saved results.